Good morning, everyone. My name is Alexis Goff, and I will be your host today for this episode of The Community Lawyer on Roots 96.1 FM, brought to you by the kind support of the European Union. Just a reminder, if you would like to call with any comments or questions, please call 335-8832. We are also streaming live on Ustream channel Roots FM /like. Today, our topic is Armadale, 3 years later. We will have a panel of guests we will hear from, giving us the opportunity to flesh out Armadale, to understand what was happening, what happened, and where we are at now, and what needs to be done to reconcile this tragic event. In 1999, Human Rights Watch did a report called Nobody's Children, where a certain Reverend Norbert Stevens made the following quote: "There's a lack of care and concern. It's a breakdown of community. For some people, ignorance is bliss. They don't want to know. For many people, these are nobody's children." On May 22nd, 2009, at the Armadale Juvenile Correctional Center, 7 girls died as a result of a fire in St. Anne, Jamaica. According to news reports, the girls had to be rescued through the barred windows of the dormitory in which they were locked, as the keys to the main doors of the dormitory could not be located during the fire. An investigation and a commission of inquiry were ordered by the Prime Minister at the time, and it was during this inquiry that horrific revelations were made, one of which was that even though the girls at the facility had started 3 fires in 2008, there were no fire drills, there was no policies developed, and no fire extinguishers placed in the dorms. The cause of this fire was also under investigation. There were 2 reports. One was that the girls had actually started the fire in an effort to escape, and the other was that a policeman started it by throwing a tear gas canister into the locked room. The living conditions for these girls were also revealed. The dorm was actually a small office, 12 feet by 20 feet, and had 7 bunk beds for 23 girls. The building code stated that for a room that size, there should have been no more than 5 individuals in this room. It was also revealed that for the first 2 weeks of at least 2 weeks of any new child's stay at the center, they had what was called lockdown. And what this meant was that children could not go outside, could not eat in the cafeteria, but in the dorms, and instead of using utensils, they were using their hands. They could not go to the bathroom after a certain time in the evening, so they were given buckets to relieve themselves. It was reported that for more than 2 weeks before the incident, all the girls were on lockdown, with the shortest time stated being 1 month. A commission of inquiry was held. A solid report by Justice Harrison was done and released in January, I believe, of 2010. Recommendations made, and we are here 3 years later, going to talk about where we are at and where we need to go. In studio, I have with me Miss Raphael Tahan, who is a child rights advisor for Jamaicans for Justice. Good morning, Raphael.
Good morning.
All right, so we know that there are Jamaican laws which we abide by locally, but there are also international laws and treaties that Jamaica has signed onto. Could you tell us what laws were broken or violated in the case of Armadale?
So basically, for everybody to understand, international law is another layer of laws that a country, if they want to follow it, if they sign or decide to follow it, they need to listen to those laws. They need to follow those laws in their country. So basically, when Armadale arrived, Jamaica had signed many international treaties, which were, for instance, the American Convention of Human Rights, the UN Convention of Rights of Children, the International Covenant of Civil and Political Rights. There was a Beijing Rule. There are many, many international laws, and for people to understand, Jamaica has to listen to those and to follow them in their own country. So basically, for people to understand, those conventions are rules where everybody, every country, sorry, if they are, no matter where people are born or no matter where they are living, those conventions are applying to them. So basically, they are basic rights like the right to dignity, the right to be treated a certain way, the right to education, the right to health. So everybody has those rights to be, and the government has to follow them. And so basically, to go to Armadale, the rights that were not followed were, for instance, the rights to be treated in a dignified way. Those girls had the rights to have education. So when the inquiry was done, we found out that a lot of those girls were unable to attend school. They were not giving any classes. Also, their health was not an issue. Most of them were not treated for any health issues. For instance, there were 2 girls in that room that had HIV, and they were not treated. They were not given the proper medication. So all those infringement goes against international rules that Jamaica has to follow.
All right, and so one of the things that I'd like to discuss, and I want to bring in our second guest, Mrs. Susan Goff, who is the chairperson of Jamaicans for Justice, and who attended all but one day of the Commission of Inquiry. I want to get a sense of, all right, so we had this tragic event happen. Is this a one-off thing? Was it a one-time thing? The gross neglect that was going on, the violations of both local and international law that happened with Armadale, was this a one-off thing, or has this been, are we seeing a pattern, or have we seen a pattern? Mrs. Goff?
Good morning.
Good morning.
To the listeners. No, unfortunately, this is one of the disturbing things about Armadale, that it was horrendous and tragic, but it was almost as though it was a tragedy waiting to happen. There have been, over the years, numerous reports, and I heard you quote from one of them, the Human Rights Watch report, I think it was, numerous reports which have pointed to the fact that children in the care of the Jamaican state are not, in fact, being dealt with according to law, and that there are breaches of their rights. You had a report by UNICEF, which was done, I think, in 1999. And then in Jamaica, you had the Keating report, which was done in about 2002, 2003. And in those reports, you also had a number of the things that are being pointed out were happening at Armadale being discussed and described in those reports. So, for example, the issue that came out of the Armadale inquiry, where the children were being housed, yet there were no functioning fire extinguishers, for example. That issue of fire extinguishers had also been raised in the Keating report years before. And the problem is that although recommendations were made that this needed to be dealt with in all the homes, it was not dealt with. And so when you had this horrendous fire breaking out at Armadale, some of the simple things that needed to be in place, like the fire extinguishers, were not in place.
And so, in terms of JFJ's role in this, this can go to either Mrs. Goff or Raphael. There are local ways, that mechanisms in place that we can advocate for children's rights and to bring this on use as a platform. But there are also international bodies that we can bring this this tragedy in front of. or was this done by any human rights organizations in Jamaica? And if so, when and what has been the result?
Well, in terms of Jamaicans for Justice, we actually have on a number of occasions now raised the issue of the treatment of children in state care at the international level. We went a few years ago to the Inter-American Commission for Human Rights in Washington, D.C., and we are a part of the Organization of American States, which means that we can go to this body to raise issues of human rights concerns there. We gave at that sitting an outline of the problems of children in state care, and we highlighted the situation of Armadale. There were representatives of the government at that same hearing who made their case for what the government of Jamaica is doing or was planning to do. Part of the problem that happens is very often we hear about the plans that the government has for making change. But when you actually look at what happens as a result, you don't in fact see all the necessary changes. And so again, earlier, within the last 12 months, going back to just one of the issues, and I'm focusing on this one simply because it was very relevant at Armadale. One of the issues to do with the need for plans for safety plans, fire plans. In the past 12 months, there have been 2 cases in which the issue of fires at a children's home have come up. And Maxfield Park was one of them. The other one, the name has gone from my mind at the moment, but also happened. And at Maxfield Park, for example, the children's advocate discovered that there were no functioning fire extinguishers, and that the fire hydrant on the property was not working, and that plans for an evacuation in case of a fire drills hadn't been properly carried out. So even when we raise these issues at the international level, it is important that we have to continue to follow up here in Jamaica and make additional reports, because very often the changes that need to be made don't get done unless there is great pressure on the agencies to do so.
And so with that, I'd like to bring in our third guest, Ms. Moira Morgan, who is founder of the Griffin Trust and has for over 10 years worked with some of the most vulnerable groups in Jamaica, and also had the honor of working with the survivors of Armadale at Diamond Crest immediately after the fire. Good morning, Ms. Morgan.
Good morning. Thank you for the invite.
Can you tell us a bit of your first impressions when you went to Diamond Crest?
In truth, I was horrified by what I saw. Children who were already traumatized were not getting neither the physical nor the emotional support that they needed. Regular medications were not happening. It was, I know I kind of held it together while I was there, but I can remember driving down to the end of the road and just sitting in the car and crying for about an hour, because there was just so much despair amongst the girls. And they felt that they'd been forgotten. They felt that nobody was kind of taking notice of what's going on. Yes, they had, you see, they say they had counselling. You see, but Jamaica's idea of counselling isn't counselling. You cannot sit down with a group of 30 children and counsel them. Hey, that's too big even for a group session. You know, they're not going to gain anything from it. And then people go away, tick their box, collect their check, and the kids are no better off. I've only been to a few state homes, but it was enough to encourage me to start my own and not to put children in those situations, the girls that I met were girls that were hurting, that were girls that were confused, that were girls that were angry. And they were angry at all sorts of things, their treatment before the fire, their treatment after the fire, their treatment before they came into care. You know, I found a number who were sexually promiscuous, uncontrollable. But when you sat and you listened to their stories, and when you read their journals that they gave you to read, and you heard their stories, it's a long history of abuse. 28 of the girls cited to me stories of having been raped or abused before they were 7, and it continuing whilst they were in state care. And I can remember back in 2005, 2006, one of my girls from the communities was sent to Glen Hope. And she ran away, and I hunted her down, found her on the gully. I said, "Sweetie, you can't stay out here, you're not safe." She said, "Miss M, at least here I get a choice who takes me. No, I'll go back there." She never told me any more beyond that. I'm left to draw my own conclusions. I mean, when you pass these homes, when you go in their gates, it's like being back down on the gully bank and all you can hear is crying, unhappy children. Maxfield Park, as at the beginning of last week, had 62 children, babies, under the age of 6. Now, these babies need to be in families or in family groups, in small units where they can be hugged, where they can be held, where they can be comforted. Because if they don't get that, if they've got this detachment. You're a psychologist, you understand what I'm talking about. When they don't get that, they can't bond with people. It's difficult for them. They don't trust people. And that makes them truly vulnerable for the rest of their lives. In spite of all the recommendations that have been made by everybody, Bo Keating come right the way through, very little has changed for the kids on the ground. Whatever policies have been made, whatever papers have been written, whatever meetings have been held, the reality for the children on the ground is changing very little. And the numbers of young people that are moving from residential home care into the correctional system is untenable. We can't continue to do it. There are more children sitting in the juvenile correctional system that should be on care and protection orders. But it's the lack of space, and it's the lack of safe space. And I'm going to give you an example of, I'm going to just veer just one little step away from Armadale, because I think we have to all understand where the mindsets of the establishment are. At the end of June 2011, I received this email, and it came from the Child Development Agency, Granville Child Care Facility, Carrickfoyle, Granville, Trelawney. Invitation to attend. Re-community liaison for the improvement of Granville Child Care Facility. Over the years, the Granville Childcare Facility has been plagued by negative reports of our girls leaving the facility and the use of the Granville all-age school premises and its environs for illicit sexual activities with boys from the community. This behaviour is by no means acceptable, and it is the prevention of this and other antisocial behaviours that we now invite your participation by way of a quarterly meeting with influential members of this community. They then go on to list certain things they want to discuss: prevent the soliciting by men from this and adjoining communities of the girls, discourage the loitering by the fences and the subsequent damage, have the community own and embrace the goals of the institution, reduce negative complaints about the facility, reduce if not prevent absconding, prevent damage to the property. Here's the one that will get you wonderfully. We are hoping that you will attend, that you will help us to develop solutions to this problem and motivate the men who often entice girls away from the facility to stop the practice. Other participants will include the Polly. 2 or 3 other men are known perpetrators and can influence the others. Owners of businesses in the community, JP from the community, as well as a student council representative from the girls. That's our children in our safe care, that they're going to sit down in a meeting with a representative from the girls, with perpetrators, known perpetrators, instead of locking them up. Yes, take the message back to the community. We will lock you up. Not we're willing to sit down and chit-chat to you. Pay the price. Leave the children alone. And when the girls are abused and the boys are abused from an early age, the girls become angry, they become promiscuous, and then people just want to lock them up, throw them away, say they're bad girls. Well, let me tell you, I met hurting girls, I met angry girls, met 1 and 2 psychotic girls. But hear what? I didn't mean any bad girls. There's not a child in this country or anywhere else on this earth that is born bad. They experience things that make them sad, unhappy, angry, vengeful, resentful, all of that and more. And nobody listens. And they go to court. Nobody listens. They're not allowed to speak. And if they make a fuss in the court to try and get themselves heard, hey, that just reinforces and endorses the term uncontrollable. Sorry, that was a soapbox, wasn't it?
No, but it was needed. It was needed. All right. So, Mrs. Goff, yes. Before we head to the break, do you have any comments on? We have Ms. Morgan, who has been on the ground. Have you seen any progress from the policy standpoint and in stakeholder meetings? I remember at the forum earlier on today, earlier on this week, we'll talk later about that with the forum host. You stating that the officials would like you to believe that we are doing well. We have entered a new day, a new culture, a new attitude for children in state care. We have heard from Ms. Morgan saying that that is not the case on the ground. Any thoughts on a policy level, on a macro level, what has been done?
Well, you see, for example, you have that can be pointed to the building of the new Metcalf remand center for the boys, and that is a step forward. That there is this new space, etc. But what you have to be looking at is, and so who gets put in there, what treatment, what facilities there are, programs, etc. But then you keep having to look also at the many more who are still, for example, in police lockup, who are still being kept in adult prisons, who are still in situations in homes and in places of safety and in correctional facilities what are the programs that are actually affecting them? What are the conditions in which they are actually living? What are the services that are actually being provided? And as Moira has said, very often what we like is the changes on paper. So we may say that, things have changed on paper. We have done training, we have done this and put in place this or that policy. But you have to always go back to what are the details on the ground and how is it affecting the lives of children. Are children still being put out of children's homes and juvenile facilities without having received the necessary education, the necessary counseling support, the necessary skills training that would allow them to have a job, the necessary transitional care that would prepare them for coming out, that would help them to find, places to live, etc., that are safe. And until we are looking at improvement on the ground, then we still have to have our reservations about what is being said.
Yeah. I don't want it to appear that there's absolutely no progress in anywhere. I can honestly say that in our work with the Department of Correctional Services in the last 18 months, they have fully supported, and we've seen a lot of movement in educating the kids, training the young people. Part of their problem was that they didn't have the necessary skills base and they didn't have the budget to buy it in. But under the DFID JRAP program, funding has been found to train officers in the institutions to heart standard level 2 so that they can deliver heart level 1 to the young people in their care. Schooling is pretty much mandatory, and we're not so frequent on the ground in Diamond Crest, but I can speak very clearly for Rio Cobre and Fort Augusta. Classes happen every day, and over at Rio Cobre they have now, we just opened a 11-station computer lab for them and put in NVQ level 1 training while they're waiting for their officer to be trained, and that was done under a CEDA grant. So the will is there from the department. The department is, they're desperately looking for somewhere for the girls. Yeah. And being told there is no budget, there is no budget. Well, there's a significant amount of taxpayers' money that's already been spent on the Malvern Special High School. Everybody heard of that one? Right. It was purchased from the Jamaica Football Federation for just over 30 million in 2010. And according to the Gleaner, another 55 million was spent on renovations. It's been spent on renovations, and this can house 60 with expansion possibilities to 120. And there's already, the dorms are already there. 5 dorms are already built. Classrooms are already built. Now, I would say shift it from one department to another, because it's sitting there costing even more money while it's empty.
All right, so while we do a quick transition, I'd like to say thank you very much to Mrs. Susan Goff for appearing today and giving us a moment of her time. And we greatly appreciate your contribution to the show.
Thank you very much.
All right, and while we get our next guest on, a quick question for Moira. I know that you have kept in contact with most, if not all, of the families.
Kind of got a link to everyone.
Okay.
I don't keep it.
Okay, gotcha. All right. So a link to everyone. When we get back from the break, I would like to ask you, what have you heard on the ground from the families about what has happened since? And then we will get into a very specific discussion with one of the mothers of the 7 girls. And we're back. My name is Alexis Goff, and I'm your host today for this episode of The Community Lawyer. We're looking at Armadale 3 years later, and I have in studio with me Raphael Tehan, the Child Rights Advisor at Jamaicans for Justice, Ms. Moira Morgan, founder of Griffin Trust. We earlier had Mrs. Susan Goff, chairperson of Jamaicans for Justice, and we will be inviting in a matter of moments Miss Williams, a parent of one of the 7 girls. But back to Miss Morgan, who has been in contact or linked to some of these families. What's been happening? What are they saying? What are their feelings?
They're feeling neglected, disenfranchised, disrespected, that the lives of their children were worth nothing, that the girls who were injured were worth nothing, that the girls who were traumatized were worth nothing. It is a moral and a social injustice, and it is an absolute national disgrace that we have permitted this to continue. And when you look that the only help that has come forward from these girls is reported on beautifully on the 27th of February 2011, when somebody, a judge, overseas, is able to find the $804 or 69,000 Jamaican dollars that the Jamaican government cannot find for a special elastic suit, bodysuit, to prevent the keloids from crippling the girls further. The girls all want to go back to school. Where are they going to get it from? Every one of them wants to go and do something positive. And yes, the reality is that with or without compensation, they will have to get on with the rest of their lives. But we, the Jamaican people, the Jamaican government, who said it is responsible, owe them. Before you buy another Peugeot, before you put another block on top of another block to build another something somewhere, please, I beg you, recognize these children, recognize their families as being the citizens of Jamaica and worthy of your love, your respect, and recognition of their dignity.
And with that, I want to say that in the media, when these things come up, we do hear of the 7 girls, and we need to also remember, though, that there are also 7 families and 7 communities and 7 extended families who have been affected by this. And so we now go to one of the family members, the mother of K.H.L. Nelson, who was 15 at the time of the fire, Miss Loretta Williams. Good morning, Miss Williams. Good morning, Miss Williams.
Hello?
Miss Williams, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Great. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
And thank you for giving us your time on the Community Lawyer this morning.
Okay, and thank you for having me too.
I would like to start with if you could tell us what led to your daughter K.H.L. being placed at Armadale. What caused K.H.L. to be placed at Armadale?
Okay, she heard of a fight with this girl, school.
And
Yeah, at school, and the judge, no, the teachers at the school ordered me to get her to the station support.
And what year was this?
What year?
Yeah.
You know, I really don't remember.
Okay.
Because things get shackled up, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But to remember the year or something.
Okay. Was she there for weeks, months before the tragic fire?
About 3 months or 4.
3 months. Okay.
Yeah.
And during those 3 months, was she verbal about the situation at Armadale? Did she let you know what was going on, or was she silent on the matter?
No, we let most of her call her sometime, and she would tell me they're not giving her good meal, the place untidy, like messy as so forth. Them have dogs biting them up and so forth. Things. 3 and 4 girls sleeping on one mattress, and some of the mattress where they are ground, and some they are. Understand?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So forth.
And I know that this must be a difficult time every year that May 22nd comes around. How are you getting through this?
You know, the grace of God has keep, you know. God keep them all, you know. If it wasn't for God, I wouldn't be here talking to you today. You know, because not a day goes by, not a week goes by, not a month goes by, you know, and it's so much, you know. But sometimes I don't feel no time when I name come up without my belly, my heart, all part of me, you know, just weak, shackled, you know, sometimes.
And this year, Keisha would have been 18, and it must be painful to think about what kind of woman she would have been today.
Yeah.
What Miss Moore was saying earlier, that the families are feeling neglected, disenfranchised, frustrated. Where are you at? What have the authorities said to you in these 3 years? What has been done for you since the fire?
We have had nothing. I've heard nothing from no one as yet. You know, nothing at all.
Moira, what has been promised, or what has the government said they're going to do?
My understanding from the parents that I've spoken to the families that I've spoken to, the government at the very least was supposed to help them bury their children. And 3 years down the line, I know some families are still in debt because you're not prepared to bury your child. You haven't got that put down. You haven't got it stashed away in a bank somewhere.
I don't prepare to bury my child. My child come and bury me. And I'm supposed to bury her.
Yeah. The families just had to do it because they're their families, and whatever they had to do, wherever they had to borrow it from, wherever they had to beg it from, wherever they had to get it from. And it really is a national disgrace.
Yeah.
That nothing has been done.
Yeah, that is true. Because
even when we come round to 22nd of May, we have a little something somewhere in the paper.
Yeah.
But nobody's taking notice of what's happening to the families, what's happening to the girls that survived, and not just the 23 girls that were in that room. There were 64 girls at Armadale that witnessed their friends burning to death. that witnessed the officers stated in the commission as pushing them back into the room.
And that is true.
And they're having to live with it.
That is true. Sometimes I wonder if they have children. Sometimes I wonder if they have children. What kind of type of person they are. You know? Sometimes, God, I even know what to say. They have to wonder, really wonder long and hard if they really have children. This lady was chewing about the children inside. And you don't even know what to say. But you know, I leave all vengeance to God, not me. God had to deal with that for her, not me. You know?
At this point, Ms. Williams, what would you want to happen? What would you like to see happen? If by the grace of God, overnight, tomorrow, there is a miracle happen.
Yeah, I would like to see, you know, the children that must get burned, children burn, they want them to alive. You know, they have this care of them for the rest of their life. Oh my God. You know, I feel for them. I feel for my children dying, but I feel for them too. Because I am a mother, you know, and I feel for all of them. You know, and by the grace of God, I would like to the government do something for the children them who are making and the parents them whose children are dying. I don't need to look and give it the children and the mother the compensation or the children then to look after them, the one them who are burned and so forth, you know. They need attention. They need a loving attention to us. The government, she must look and see, you know, because I know she have children or she have grandchildren or whatever for. So she can use her feeling, judge everyone, you know. She can use her feelings and judge everyone's feeling. You know, but otherwise, for the people that will make the fire, otherwise, for the people that make the fire, I'm not going to be the judge of them. God's going to do that. You know, because they say, leave all vengeance to God. So God has to deal with them differently. Yeah. But the other people, children, them, what they say, they lock down and so forth, they need to make them feel welcome. They need to make them feel welcome, like the place where they say them are built. Let it look like their home, you know. Give them different, at this time, they feel comfortable. Yeah. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Make it look like as a prison, where they like these are big people that are dealing. Those are children, you know, children, and they say, like they say, God is said, suffer the little children to come unto me, you know, so they must understand that too. You understand that children is not care they have the kind of way, but you must, you know, show them a love the children them and don't deal with them like you're dealing like it's animal. They are human beings. They are human beings and God loves the children, and if you hurt the children, you hurt God. You understand? That is all thing. If you hurt the children, you hurt God too. Don't care what they are doing or what. You must know to bring them. You know? Because if I follow, you see, like my child with like when she make a different like she make war and so forth, and if I never do the will of what the teacher said, I could keep her at home and never return her to the station that she end up that far to Diamond. I could keep her there, but I said no, I tried to do the right thing as a parent. You understand? So I expect that the people that get old to deal with the people, the children, them like their home. You understand? Like they're for their children. You understand what I'm saying? So it does. So and I look to the social, the government, you know, I look for a power to do something for the one them who burn, the one them who die. You understand? Something for the parents and the one them who are living and get their civil burn, because when I go to a session up to Wayne there, and I look and I see the children there, to two of them, and if I see they have the mark, they have the mark, and they know that they're doing down that way. But you have selfishness. You know, selfishness that they really do. You know, people can have so many, what kind of art they are. To show a thing like drama, whatever, in the place of the children, what kind of art they have. They don't have any heart. They don't have any art, man. Can they show a thing that children like that? It's children, they are children. They're dealing with, they're not dealing with the big people. They are children, man. Oh my God. Sometimes when I remember the time like this come up, oh my God, my belly, my heart, all parts of me are ripped out. When time like when it come on to December and time like this, my heart ripped out and my belly. You know?
Ms. Williams, I want to make a statement here, because you were talking about how you handle the situation when KHL was in that fight. You are not at fault for what happened to KHL Nelson. And I know. Sorry?
What is that?
I said you are not at fault. I know you are not at fault for what happened to KHL Nelson. Right? You are not at fault. It is the government, the state, that has failed miserably in the case of these girls. And I know it must be hard for parents to think that what have I done? Why did I make that choice? Why did I make that decision? But it must be made very clear. And in Jamaica, we have this talk about how the children bad and we must look on parents. Let's make this clear. There is no act. There is no act that a child can do that defines that child and that justifies them perishing in a fire. No act that they can do. So this idea, as Maura was saying earlier about this bad picnic thing, we must stop this. And as you are saying, Miss Williams, we must treat them as children.
Yeah.
They must be treated as children.
Of course it is. They must treat it like children.
And what we need to tell them is that we must treat our children as you would like your children to be treated.
Yes. That's the next thing. You must, like how you love your children, you must love others.
Yes.
You know? Three things said, I love my Keishel and I love others. You know, because if you love your one alone, your one cannot succeed. You have to love your and love others. That is both God.
Yes.
Yeah.
Ms. Williams, thank you so much for giving us your time today. And it does not end here. We are seeing more voices coming out and speaking up against what has happened and trying to prevent another Armadale from happening. So I know you're feeling neglected and distrustful, but there are people and we are determined, both at JFJ, at the Griffin Trust, with ICANN, who had the forums this week, to make sure that, one, this doesn't happen again and that those that were affected are not forgotten. So thank you for your time this morning, Ms. Williams. And so, listeners, as we reflect on the 3rd anniversary of Armadale, which was undoubtedly one of the worst events happening to that happened to our children in our nation's history, we need to be reminded that children are the most vulnerable citizens in any society and the greatest of our treasures. The children who are in police lockups experiencing gross neglect in understate care are testimony to an unfinished job. The responsibility to fight for their rights is ours, to do what we can and to encourage the officials to do the same. They are all our children. I wish to thank our guests today, Mr. Raphael Tahand, the Child Rights Advisor at Jamaicans for Justice, Susan Goff, Chairperson at Jamaicans for Justice, Ms. Maura Morgan, founder of Griffin Trust, and especially Ms. Loretta Williams, mother of one of the 7 girls, K.H.L. Nelson, who died at the age of 15. Thank you for your time today, listeners. Have a great day, and we will see you next week.